To start off, I think Kirby's Adventure is a pretty good looking game, but unfortunately the NES could only show 55 colors across the entire library. This means some colors, like the classic Kirby pink, were left behind because other shades of pink had more use cases. So the first thing I did when looking at art was make Kirby's color palette look how we know it does today. I also separated the eyes by an extra pixel because I think it plays more into the cute round look. And then for shading, I just did some basic spherical shading and I made the outline get lighter toward the top. For King Dedede, he was a bit more work, not only because he was bigger, but originally he was just 3 colors and had a few messy lines I had to fix up. For his shading, I did a bit of dithering and again brightened the outline toward the top. The rest of the characters were fairly simple and I just had to reference the more modern games in art. The maps too I think look really good for their time, but they also could benefit from having access to more colors, especially for shading and highlights. All the maps seem to have the same problem, that being that the contrast is way too high. Usually you want to save the color black for something pretty important, like the ground where your character touches or doorways. Here it's kinda just thrown all over the place, so a new player could find it pretty hard to tell the difference between a wall that you can't go through and a tree that you can go through. And so here in my version, I pretty much removed every black outline from things that you don't directly interact with. I also made the ground layer look slightly 3D by making the top of the grass visible. I think subtle things like this, along with parallaxing, could add a pseudo 3D feel that makes the game feel higher quality without really adding on to development time. And for my water here, I made the foreground blend together with the background and made it a bit reflective in the back too. I also mended all the really visible seams and made the trees a little skinnier. I'm guessing they're really thick because they had to be placed with the tile set system, but we don't need to do that anymore. Granted, a lot of people still do. Overall here, I think the biggest impact from a bigger palette is how much better the water looks without having to change any of its shape. For this map, in the background I changed all the hills into trees and I added some atmospheric perspective so you can tell they're receding in space. I then also made it look like you can see through the water a bit and added some shading onto the rounded objects. This one I think was actually pretty fine how it was, and I think the real improvements to it would come from things like particle effects and post-processing, like having leaves blowing around and making the water actually shiny. For this underground one, the biggest change again was adjusting the contrast. The pattern on the back wall being so hard just kinda makes it look messy, and then I also added an opening where you come in because it being sealed off just seems weird. In the doorways here, I just added a little bit of depth to them and I gave them proper frames. And again, because of the tiling system, the walls look a bit disconnected, so I blended them together. I also made the platforms touching the walls actually coming out of the wall because I'm assuming that's what the intention was originally. Overall, looking at this game, it's pretty impressive looking given the limitations, and it was pretty fun trying to stay faithful to the original design while still adding in some modern techniques. I think this is a pretty good way to learn about other styles, and if you're ever making tile sets for a game, the NES era has a lot of good stuff to reference. If you want to see me do this with your art, you can send it to me on Twitter, and if you enjoyed, I have some other videos where I fix up pixel art from other places. But that's all for now, peace.